This is the second part of Chapter 2. So starting off looking at physical activity promotion. So here we're looking at it with respect to the population. So mass media is a method used to get information to many people at one time. So we really are looking at being able to get the concept of the benefits of physical activity, consequences of inactivity, where you can do physical activity. So the promotion of physical activity to a very large audience, so to a mass audience. Examples of these: television and radio, billboards, posters, commercials at cinemas, print media such as newspapers and magazines, and web-based interactive information. Just looking at the last two in particular, print media such as newspapers and magazines, they are aimed to be read by many people, as opposed to a brochure that you may pick up at the chemist or a physio clinic, that are not aimed necessarily to be read by an entire population. They are what we had looked at earlier, being simply print or web-based media. But print media such as the newspapers and magazines have a much bigger target audience, hence they also fit under population mass media. With our web-based interactive information, what we would be looking at here is web-based information that provides access for a large group of people. So is it written in many languages? Does it apply to many ages? Is it specific for different population groups? The more of these boxes that are ticked, the better it will go in providing many people with access to physical activity. The benefits: potential to reach large numbers, low cost per person. So this is again one of the differences between mass media and the simple print media that was mentioned earlier. Mass media, many people. So what is a mass media campaign aimed to do? First one is to raise awareness. Our awareness, again, benefits and consequences. To increase people's motivation, so to move them from a point where they haven't thought about doing physical activity to a point where they will firstly consider doing physical activity, and then secondly actually taking steps to participate in an increased amount of physical activity. The second part of this is that the mass media campaign on its own is not enough. It needs to be combined with programs offered at a local community level. If these programs are not offered at a local community level, then the people, although they may understand the benefits, they may understand the consequences, they actually don't have anything to then go and participate in. Again, looking over the key roles, raise awareness, benefits, the non-benefits, which we could also write as the consequences, listed there as consequences as well, increasing interest in physical activity participation, and raising awareness of community-based programs. So this one here, the community-based programs, just relating back to our previous slide that has said that mass media on its own is not enough, and it does need to be combined with local community support and motivating people enough to actually take action. One of the biggest social media campaigns that Victoria had run was Go For Your Life. This no longer exists. It has been replaced by the Better Health channel. You may hear some people still refer to Go For Your Life. If you type in it on the web, you'll be redirected. So what we're looking at here is a couple of examples as to population promotion using mass media. So the first one, Better Health. And at this point, I'm going to set a task for each of the initiatives that we will look at, talk about. For this and Chapter 3, I want you to go to the website, explore it, and check the following. The audience. So who is it being aimed at? Languages. How many languages does the website support? Is there information for different ages? Does it promote physical activity within the community? So giving examples of groups that you could join. And also, does it provide information on the benefits and physical activity and consequences of physical inactivity? So I want you to look at each of these and determine what the audience is based on the number of languages, ages that it targets. Does it promote physical activity opportunities within the community, and the benefits of physical activity, consequences of inactivity? So I've got the Better Health channel. Okay, jumping to the social-ecological model. So what I've asked you to do previously with the websites, Better Health channel, and the next ones will probably actually occur in Chapter 3. Here, social-ecological model, we've talked about this a lot, but to go over it again, we first of all have the individual. So this is looking at statistics, biological, so what genes do they bring into the equation, and then we look at cognitive or behavioural. So cognitive is looking at knowledge, behavioural is looking at their actions. Interpersonal, but we refer to it generally as social. Supportive behaviours of others. What social climate have they been brought up in? So, for example, family, maybe the country that they come in from, the community in which they live, and their particular culture. So living within all of those settings, they will have different ideas and supporting factors on and relating to physical activity. Our physical environment, we have two. We have our natural environment and we have our constructed environment. So our natural environment, weather and geography. So for example, someone that lives in an alpine area is more likely to be involved in snow sports than someone who lives in a coastal environment who is more likely to be involved in water sports. Someone that lives in a warm climate is more likely to be involved in outdoor sports. Someone that lives in a very cold climate is more likely to be involved in indoor sports. Our constructed environment is mainly looking at what we can alter, what we can construct. Can we build things? So can we build a skate park? Can we put in footpaths? Can we change the lighting to make people feel safer in areas? Can we build an indoor swimming pool? Can we install showers in a workplace or a change room in a workplace? Can we install bike racks in a workplace? And lastly, it's policy and organisational factors. So policies governing incentives for physical activity or inactivity, and policies governing resources and infrastructure related to physical activity or inactivity. This is the diagram that Vika says that we should be using with respect to the social-ecological model. No different to the one that we have continued to use in class. The individual, social, the physical environment, constructed, natural, policy, and the thing that we have included that sits around this is then the setting. So would we be looking at this from a workplace perspective? Would we be looking at this from a school perspective, a community perspective, etc.? But what Vika says that we need to look at are these important things. From the textbook, we get a slightly more in-depth description of individual. So here it's talking about psychological, behavioural again, demographics, so nothing new to us. Social, looking at our culture, social traditions, our role expectations within our social environment, patterns of behaviour within social environment, peers, friends, family, partners, and then social support, whether it be professional or personal. Physical environment, we have natural and built factors that we've talked about. Policy is probably the one I want to go over a little bit more because it's probably the harder of the ones to understand. We could be looking at law, simple regulatory practices, and procedures and rules that promote health of the community. So we could have workplace legislation. So for example, enforce short physical activity breaks from sedentary work. Urban planning policies, inclusion of green spaces in built environments. So if you notice, most of the new housing developments, they do promote it around either a large water area, a large park. The reason for this is that does promote the greater chance for people to walk in the area. Active transport policies, so bike lockers at train stations. It could be an education mandate, for example, compulsory physical and sport education until year 10. Physical activity recommendations, so National Physical Activity Guidelines. Workplace procedures, so minimum standards required for health and fitness. And school rules, no skateboards or scooters permitted to, at or from school. So some of these may actually be looking at decreasing physical activity, but it is from a safety perspective. Just another way of looking at the social-ecological model, probably a harder one to look at than what we've been told we need to. So although it's nice, it's not something that we actually need to know. This one again is nice, but we need to be careful because we need individual, social, environment, whether it's constructed or natural, and policy. So here they confuse it a little bit through socio-cultural policy and environmental policy, but what it does give is some nice ideas as to what could be used as examples within ours. And again, they've put their settings around the outside as well. So with the intervention, what we need to know is who, why, where, how, and what. And our definition of who, the target, why, the determinants, such as factors that affect physical activity, so gender, reduced physical activity in women, etc. So if we look at women as the example, the individual or group, so this is our target, women aged between 18 to 65. What are the levels of influence? So what are we going to use? Policy level, whereby mass media campaigns are aimed at women. The agent of change, so what we're looking at is the delivery mode. Curriculum in schools that is interesting to girls and promotes physical activity education. Policy that stipulates girl-only physical education classes. I actually find that interesting considering that the target group in this example is 18 to 65, because if we're using school as the delivery mode, I'm not sure how many of this population will get. Might get some 18-year-olds, but I'm not sure about the remainder. Resources required: staff, financial costs, other assets, so cost of researching, writing policy, implementing new programs in schools, training of PE teachers, etc. if you are asked to write something like this, make sure that they all actually meet what we've said we're going to do. When we're looking at multiple levels of influence, really what this is saying is that if our intervention ticks the individual box, ticks the social box, ticks the environmental, again whether it's constructed or natural, ticks the policy box, the more of these that we tick, the greater the chance of us or the intervention actually working. Here the text again is just giving some examples of strategies at an interpersonal level, so just focusing on the individual. Focusing on the social. Focusing on the physical environment, so all of these are in the text. Physical, organisational policy, but need to stress, if we look at individual, social, physical and policy, add together, much greater chance of our policy succeeding. Tailoring. So the term tailoring means that it needs to work for the population group you're dealing with. So, very important, needs to work for the target population. You don't want to set up a wonderful writing program where students are given the information as to the benefits of writing. They have bikes brought into school for bike ed class, so there's our knowledge and skill base of the individual. They work out where people live, and so that social groups for writing can be established. There's a policy that is very supportive at school of students writing to school. However, if there are no places at school for them to store their bikes, then chances are very, very few people will in fact ride to school. So it needs to be tailored so that the group that's being targeted can actually succeed. And an example from the textbook.